Yes, committee meeting. I can have your attention, please. Quiet in the room, please. It's the ITGS committee meeting for today, Wednesday, May 29th. We have 7 items on the agenda. We will take public comment first. So those speakers for general public comment would be Mr. Herman. Last I heard, that was you.
How much time? 3 minutes?
Yeah, multiple items. Okay.
3 minutes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, in regards to January 28, a gentleman by the name of Jose Luis Huizar, active number 195726, is inactive, representing the bar license, because on item 1 in CD 14, which at one point represented Jose Huizar, y'all, you see, Jose Huizar took out of consideration that as a graduate from education at UCLA, although this is the National Education Center for for construction and education. Fuck education, because you didn't learn shit, Jose Huizar, you fucking crook. And that's why his bar license is no longer active as of January 28, 2019, for the record, 195726.
He's not on this committee, and that's not a committee business.
Related to item 1, sir, as part of the program here.
I see. Go ahead.
Yeah, as Matt Dowd said in the past, and you recall what he said?
I'm just trying to keep you focused. I know that's hard.
Thank you, sir. It's fucked up. Now, in CD1, I got nothing bad to say about Cedillo. Very polite, courteous, respectful councilman who's looking out for housing in the community. Maybe one day he'll provide me with housing in the community so I can get the fuck out of City Hall instead of being in here venting because you fucking assholes bring me in here for therapy all the time. But I like it. It's free. Then, on item 3, fuck your report on the budget and finance, because Paul Kukorian is up in the Rotunda on a private meeting right now with those other fucking Jews. Then on item number 4, Bureau of Engineering report, response to the fiscal year 2018-2019, fuck your electrical vehicles. All you do is say, welcome back, Bob. All you fucking Jews do is park them in the street and let other people drive them. You don't charge them. What kind of fucking Jew is that? Another Holocaust. Why even have BMWs if you don't charge them? Why? Why the fuck you have BMW, you fucking asshole Jews don't charge them? Then, on item number 5, since I'm a white Jew, as you heard in today's display downstairs for 2 fucking hours, I'm a nigger Jew too. Nigger Jew talks about what? Energy, climate changes, environmental changes, but that's not Mueller's fault. All he reports is that Trump did nothing wrong. The climate change is gonna get better. Fuck America, fuck the world, fuck all the Jews. Then the last item, which is 6, you son of a bitch. Report relative proposed 3rd Amendment, but I stick to the 2nd Amendment, the right to bear arms and protect myself from a TRO and the TMU. Fuck you.
Eric Previn.
How many items are you speaking on, Mr. Previn?
Thank you.
How many items?
How many what? Yeah, I signed up in the kiosk. And for the record, special meetings do not require a general public comment, but you're generously offering that, so I'll give it because it's on the kiosk. I think BOE is doing a great job of managing a lot of the projects for the city, including some Prop K projects. Drucker's here, Neil Drucker. Now, when the public wants to understand what's happening, obviously there's only one mechanism because they're not a sharing-oriented group, which is to do a Public Record Act request. And so we asked, because in our neighborhood they're doing an oversized gymnasium that is going to effectively blight one of our last few remaining open spaces. So they've been working quietly and secretly over there. We've been saying, hey, can we see the records? Drucker, who is what I would describe as one of the best, has simply made promises that he's not delivering on. He says he's talking to Marcia Kimbrough Gonzalez, who's the city attorney on the project. It's just very embarrassing because our community wants to be up to speed on big costly projects that have a $7 million shortfall, Blumenfield, hashtag hockey rink. I mean, Prop K is great if you can get the pieces in place, but if it doesn't fit the neighborhood, it's a big red flag and it's a big problem. So we're just trying to get a sense of what's going on, and I would ask him and Sean Fanter, they keep moving around, and then they just pretend like, oh, Mr. Previn. So it's very, very bad form, and it upsets us. It's me, I'll speak on behalf of myself. Getting to the budget, the agenda, I take a note about the EV, electric vehicle charging stations. Obviously, the world is coming forward with this kind of activity. We need it. And I understood 10,000, 40% of which would be city-owned, and we're nowhere close, but we're getting there by 2022 is, I think, that goal. But the question is, how much do they cost, and where are they going? How are we going to catch up, and is it a real, are we basing this on projections that are meaningful? Because, there's, I think, I read 40-something thousand plug-in vehicles. Is that the is that the number? Because that's a small number, and I know we're basing it on transportation projections to try to get up to the number we need, but, and I'm as green as the next guy. I just find we need a plan, and the idea of we're going to have 60% private partners, but at what terms? And are the people going to wind up, because I just came from New York, where they are aggressively tuning up the way they attack motorists all over the place. No matter, I know at Metro, Krikorian and Bonham, we're considering congestion pricing. There's a lot of schemes underway to traffic the place and up-green the place, which is great. But today, you had the port workers, some of the Teamsters down there, not the contractors. And we can't put the burden on the regular folks who have those low stagnant wages as the cost of living goes up, up, up. So I would just ask that whatever happens with these electric vehicles that are mostly for fancy people. My sister got one of those, it's like a spaceship. It is an amazing vehicle. Anyway, good luck with that, and good luck with the election coming up in CD12.
Thank you. So, members of the committee, there are speaker cards on number 1. If there's no objections, we'll take items 2, 3, and 6 on consent. Is that okay? That being the order, thank you. Let's take item number 1 then. We have 2 speaker cards. Clerk, would you read item number 1?
Item number 1, Chair, is a Municipal Facilities Committee report relative to a supplemental ground lease agreement with Go for Broke National Education Center for construction at the existing Go for Broke monument located on the south side of Temple Street.
We have 2 speaker cards. Let's have first Katie Kiefer come forward, please. Take the chair and the mic. Share the mic. This is Share the Mic Day.
Hi. Okay. Good afternoon. Katie Kiefer, Council District 14, Downtown Los Angeles Field and Public Works Coordinator. We support this item. Go for Broke has been diligently working with all city departments, and we look forward to this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker will be Mitch Mackey. Mackey?
Good afternoon. My name is Mitch Mackey. I'm the president of Go for Broke National Education Center. I just wanted to come and, first of all, thank you for considering this proposal for the supplemental ground lease, and to reiterate the mutual benefits, not only for our organization, but for the developing of the First Street North parcel where it's going to be located. The 2 organizations that are involved in the development of this parcel is, of course, ourselves and the Little Tokyo Service Center, both of which have long-standing positive histories in the Japanese American community. So I just wanted to urge your support of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, members. John Shepard with General Services Department. The department requests the authorization to negotiate and execute a supplemental ground lease agreement with Go for Broke, those you've just heard from today, for a construction of an educational center and an interpretive center and educational center at an existing site along Temple and Alameda. Any questions?
Any questions? Any?
Are the parking spaces that are going to be lost, are they getting replaced in some way, or what happens with that?
At this time, we believe that the parking would be lost, and that's not a part of this lease agreement, replacing them.
Okay, do you have a recommendation for that? Okay, moved approval, no objection, seeing that so approved.
Thank you.
Take us items number 4 and 5, we'll take them together.
So item number 4 is a report from the Bureau of Engineering in response to fiscal year 2018-19 adopted budget recommendation relative to the city's mid- and long-term needs to address the growing use of electric vehicles. This item has also been referred to the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee. And item number 5 is a Bureau of Street Lighting report relative to increasing the number of electric vehicle chargers to match the demand planned by the auto industry by early 2020. This matter has also been referred to the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee and the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee.
Departments?
You want to go first? Good afternoon.
Don't fight, guys. It's okay.
Mahmoud Karimzadeh, Bureau of Engineering. As the Mayor's Sustainable City Plan, PLAN, mandates the improvements to the city's air qualities and also reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from municipal transportations and municipal buildings, we think the electrical vehicle station, charging stations would be facilitating to get to those goals. And also, we think that the goals, now that is 10% or 25% reduction in those areas, it could be accelerated in the future. So having a plan or a strategy in midterm or long term would be very beneficial in order to implement these goals. As we're working as a technical support right now to General Services and Los Angeles Department of Transportation in order to create electrical vehicle charging stations in municipal buildings, as well as helping out with LADOT on technical aspects when they have a curbside station or charging stations. Also, other city departments like police departments are creating the vehicle charging stations in their facilities, as well as LAWA or Recreation and Parks also involved with this, and Port of LA is doing their share. And we think in order to continue with these efforts, the midterm needs could be one of these 4 items here. That the city department needs to identify and define the required number and locations. That's first. Plan for it ahead of time. What are the possible locations that could receive these stations in terms of space and also the power supply, the needs, and then get a list of them going on. Then we think that actually the existing facilities that have power capacities could be complicated. It's not easy to recognize the future needs as well as the number of electrical vehicle stations that could be increased in the future as well. We also think that identifying funding grants that are possibly available from federal or state programs could be a very good way to look at in order to facilitate again this program to progress. Also, in terms of operation and maintenance, we need to think about that and create a protocol for operation and maintenance of this. Right now, there are 3 to 5 years, basically maintenance warranties and guarantees on this with the design build contractors that we have on board. However, we think that if the city needs to keep these electrical vehicle charging stations on board and increase the numbers, we need to create something with the Department of General Services, create funding or program for it, training programs in order to get staff acquaintance with the needs of these stations. Also, in terms of a long term, we think that the departments continuing to develop their own program is important. Bureau of Engineering could help technically, of course, we're always there to assist, but we think that the departments should step up in terms of asking us for assistance and help we will be assisting them in terms of to get the location or the power supplies available to them. Also, we think that the infrastructure strategy needs to be done too. A lot of these stations is not a matter of power or location, but also getting power and location at the same place. Sometimes the power is available to the vehicles, but then the location that you can put them is away from them, and getting this infrastructure going needs also some construction. We think also as the capacity and technology of the electrical vehicles changes, the station to charge them also will change. And we need to think about the future as well in terms of technology and keep up with the technology. How do we do it and program it? We think that additional funding should be available for some of these activities in order to continue this effort. And also, we think that the relevant city departments should continue to identify grant, as I mentioned in the midterm goals, in order to see what the long-term goal could be consistent with those goals available from state or federal. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Norma Sahaki, and I am the Director for the Bureau of Street Lighting. As part of the 18-19 budget hearings, a request was made that the Bureau of Street Lighting, in consultation with DWP, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce my DWP coordinator. Scott Briasco is here from DWP that I consulted with on this report. A request was made in consultation with DWP to report on the status of EV charging stations in the city and plans to meet the anticipated demand by 2020. The Bureau of Street Lighting is a part of an overall effort to deploy electrical vehicles charging stations citywide. The report before you outlines the city's current goals, measures, and progress and challenges of the programs. The overlaying mission of the city is to drive EV adoption by reducing range anxiety by increasing charging convenience. Various city departments take part in the city's EV task force that discusses the purchase of EV vehicles and charging infrastructure, as well as coordinate purchasing procedures and share best practices. The DWP has set a goal to have 10,000 commercial, publicly accessible electric vehicle chargers available throughout the city, with 4,000 of those city-owned by 2022. At the time this report was prepared, there were 2,519 EV chargers of those publicly available EV chargers installed, with 1,207 city-owned. The deployment of these city-owned EV charging stations involves various departments, including street lighting, DWP, DOT, LAWA, GSD, Rec and Parks, Port of LA, LAPD, and LAFD. In the report, there is a map that shows the locations from BSL, DOT, and DWP that are anticipated to be installed by the end of this fiscal year. The report also discusses various challenges and standards that the EV Task Force is collectively working on that will enhance and standardize the experience of the EV charging user. Nevertheless, these challenges are outmatched by the increased demand and popularity of the existing EV charging stations deployed throughout the city. Thank you.
DWP.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Briasco, and I manage the electric transportation program at LADWP. So we've been partnering with all of the city departments, Streetlight and GSD, among others, Park and Recs, and other city departments to really be there to support the installation of the EV chargers, and it's providing the electrical interconnection, but it's also rebate programs that we have in place. So we provide rebates for the installation of level 2 chargers, so it can be for workplace or for public access or for the fleet. We're expanding that. It's a pretty generous program. It's $5,000 per installed charger. We have other rebates that are on the books for used electric vehicles that customers buy. There's a residential rebate program, and we're getting ready to launch 2 new programs, one for DC fast charging and one to support medium and heavy duty fleet vehicles. All of these programs are effectively funded through environmental credits that the Department of Water and Power gets from the state. So it's low carbon fuel standard credits, or what are called cap and trade or AB 32 credits. So there's no impact to ratepayers. The money does come directly to us, and under the regulation, it has to be used for electric vehicle current or future owners. So it's really a great program, and we're really kind of pleased to be partnering with the different city departments to make this happen.
Okay, so who leads the task force? The mayor's office. And of course, the mayor's office changes from time to time. Who from a department level? That's what I was afraid of. So that's what I was afraid. So here, a point of view from an electric car driver. I've driven a plug-in hybrid for 4 years. I have a full electric car now. The city of LA is far behind other cities. You look at the city of Burbank, where their water and power department runs the entire program. They're very well placed throughout the city. The city runs them. They're revenue generating. They have partners like ChargePoint and others that do that. City of Pasadena is probably one of the best cities around. And then you look at cities like Whittier, who has 2 chargers in the entire city. So it's obviously every city's got to take the initiative. I think Los Angeles wants to be a leader in the field, but I don't think we're ever going to get there without a concise team that has departmental control over it, not just political control, but departmental control that someone says, we are going to coordinate this. One thing we see too often in the city of LA is the lack of coordination sometimes between departments. I'm trying to open a parking lot in my district that we've built 4 months ago with Water and Power's approval. The General Services won't let us open because they didn't have an agreement to do it. That's crazy. So I think we really need to see a concise program where some department walks to the front of this and says, we're going to take control of this, and we will coordinate with all those other departments. Otherwise, we have a hodgepodge of stuff, and I see that now. I look at Water and Power, you go over there, you got, 40 chargers over there? They're full constantly. You can't get a place. You go to LA DWP, and airports, they're full. You go to Van Nuys, they're never full for some reason. I don't understand. But one of the problems we have is many of these little installations, like the one just right down the street, they put the charger on the street, but they don't mark the street as a charger-only parking place. And so anyone who has a charger car that needs to go get there is blocked out by, they're called iced out, because they have internal combustion engine cars blocking them. So we need concise consideration of how we implement all this, and I don't think it's there yet. So I would like to see a lot more thought given to having a direct person, one person that coordinates with all the departments on this, thinks about DWT. Do we need to put green parking there? Do we need to put signs that says EV parking only? Water and Power, are we getting enough power to those? Some of those sites I've stopped at are charging at 15 amps. It's going to take you 8 hours to charge a car at 15 amps. So we really need a concise policy with leadership, and that would be my recommendation. So, Mr. Bloomfield, I know you have a plug-in too, don't you?
I do.
All right.
I've suffered from range anxiety, as was mentioned, and just to build on what you said, some of the spots, like the DWP lot on Van Nuys Boulevard in Van Nuys, when you go north on it, the plug doesn't even work for a modern EV. I was last year or something, I was driving a Volt at the time, and went on my phone to see where the electric chargers were. I found the DWP lot. I went in because I was low on energy, and none of the the plug-in devices would fit with my car. And my car was a normal, current generation car, but the generation from the plug-ins was way old. So that needs to be reflected, obviously, on the chargers as well. And that's going to be the key, is keeping up with the technology and all the rest. I was curious, as a question though, when we do a charger with Bureau Street Lighting, how does the price compare to a commercial charger, like that you would find at the mall?
So I think all the different chargers are different. The ones at the mall, it depends if you're going to actually be charging somebody for the charge or if you're not. So there's things that I guess they call them dumb chargers. That's not a good term, but they call it dumb chargers. Those are typically cheaper. The ones that we use on our street lights actually have a device that you can charge the user for charging. So those are a little bit more expensive because we have to pay for that. And we also factor in about 5 years of, license and all that kind of stuff. So the chargers range for us between 8,000 to 9,000. Dumb chargers are probably around 2 to 3,000.
I was actually thinking, I appreciate the answer to that. But I was also thinking in terms of the user, like are our chargers priced competitively to another charger that someone might go, and if they go to the mall and they use the ChargePoint app or one of these apps, are they going to be charged the same price using a street charger as they would a charger on a private lot?
So I think it kind of depends. I think Scott may know more or less the charges on the private lots. A lot of them are free if you go to like Whole Foods or whatever. For the Bureau Street Lighting, we charge $1 to $2 per hour depending on where in the city you are. Right now, I think some of the other city chargers, they're not charging at this point. For us, because we're assessment funded, we have to charge in order to pay the electricity to the Department of Water and Power. Scott, did you want to add to that about some of the?
You do per hour or per kilowatt? I always thought it was,
We do it per hour just to make it easy for the user to understand. Some people do it per kilowatt hour. It's just we wanted to try to make the program a success. We wanted to make it a little bit easier for everybody to understand. Not try to figure out how much kilowatts is my car going to use, and then try to figure out in their head what that would cost. So right now we're doing it per hour just to make it simple.
Yeah, I think the pricing, the BSL setup is pretty competitive from what we have assessed. There are different pricing models out there. A lot of the chargers that DWP has installed are those so-called dumb chargers. So in our customer lotto or at the JFB, those are free. Again, we're actually paying the electric bill on those with the LCFS credits that are being generated. So there's no impact to our ratepayers on that model. So, but I think those chargers that BSL has installed, it's pretty competitive with the charge point is the one.
And that's been one of the discussions in the task force is how DOT is also putting charges into their parking lots. What is that eventually going to be, that charge is going to be? So the task force has talked about it. It just hasn't really come to the point where we've come all to a conclusion as far as what that charge would be.
right. And in the ideal world, this is not going to be, especially the public chargers that are on the street, we're not looking at these as revenue generators, but as they should pay for themselves and basically be neutral and pay for whatever maintenance they need, which is another question. The report mentions vandalism as a potential issue. Is there a plan to deal with that, and how do we respond to that?
So for our chargers, which are right out in the public right away, right in the line of fire, we have seen some vandalism. So every time we work with the charging manufacturers in order to try to harden their chargers. There are those that do get vandalized. The money that we do collect, and it does help us pay for that vandalism. We have staff that we're training in order to make the repairs to those chargers. Because they're connected to our streetlights, our staff are the ones that are going to be doing those repairs. And then if it's basically too much, sometimes we have to swap them out. But we are working with the vendors to try to make that more of a hardened location. Some of the chargers were actually, if you've seen them, they look kind of funny, but they're kind of high up. And the reason is so that you can't take a bat to them and smack them. What happens is as you start the charge, the unit will let the hose come down so that then you can pull it. That was to keep it out of the hands of some of the vandals that we were experiencing.
Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is actually an issue I'm very well familiar with. I remember when street lighting first piloted this co-location on our light poles. But my question is actually regarding, and I have to say, I think there's been tremendous progress since the first launch, because I remember that first launch, and it was DWP and street lighting and everyone in between trying to figure out how to get a publicly installed location. And so I think the convening of this task force has proven a lot of benefit in the increased installation. My question is, have you been able to figure out a way to do a fast charger using any of our light pole infrastructure?
No, because of the way our circuitry is set up, the fast chargers won't quite work on our streetlights. We haven't really had that opportunity.
And has there been a formula, has the Department of Transportation adopted a formula? Because I know part of the costs associated with these public installations were also including some of the revenue losses that would come as a result of dedicating a dedicated parking space to street lighting, utilizing, availing itself to providing this public charging location versus DOT just running the parking. Has there been a standardized formula that's now been set, or are they still, is that still a moving target?
So what we did for those areas that there was a meter, in order to incentivize the program, we worked with DOT to basically remove that meter. But part of the revenue from those locations, the reason that it's at $2 per hour is to help cover that cost. So we have worked with them on a proposal of what that cost to them would be.
Okay. And for DWP, I mean, on the locations that you're installing, it's purely on the public property side of city-owned property?
Well, so some of them are at service centers. For example, down in Crenshaw, we unveiled 22 chargers at that service center. So we're looking at other service centers. So those obviously are publicly available. There are chargers that we're putting in as we're converting our fleet to be electric. All the locations where there are yards, for example, those are now starting to be transformed to have charging to support those fleet vehicles, and then for employees for workplace charging. So there's a combination of the publicly accessible, the fleet, and for workplace charging. So it's the three. We're also looking at the concept of DC fast charge plazas. So that's something that you kind of see with Tesla, for example. They may have a spot of, at a Target or wherever, where they've kind of carved out some parking spaces for DC fast charging. So we're also partnering and working with the others that are doing those types of installations. So EV America and others that are doing that. So it's bringing the power to those locations. We're looking at some of our other facilities to potentially do very large DC fast charge plazas, maybe at a distributing station in downtown or other locations. We think the zoo is a great location too. So it's bringing the power.
Well, I know the zoo is the central location that everyone goes to when they're running out of juice in their car.
Yeah.
And from personal experience, I was right after getting elected, I wanted to pilot utilizing one of the i3s that was part of the LAPD fleet. Before I committed myself to it, because I needed to living in the Northeast Valley, I wanted to make sure that I had sufficient range to get me to where I needed to go. What I hadn't anticipated was 3 days after I took possession of that vehicle that the Latuna fire would break out, and oftentimes I couldn't even make it back from the command post to get anywhere to charge, so I had to just call it a day. Clearly we have insufficient supply for the demand. The bigger challenge is where we don't have the fast chargers, because just realistically, it's the speed that you need to encourage everybody to participate in utilizing or getting an electric vehicle, because if it's going to take, and it does take 8 hours or 6 hours to charge, folks aren't gonna, they're just not gonna do it. And I know we have, at like Lakeview Terrace Library, we have, a couple of publicly accessible locations. I know many times I had to go to Mission Division to get powered back up. But that I think is probably our biggest challenge right now, is we have a complete insufficient supply of the fast chargers. And so, my bigger concern is we can go ahead and check that box and say, oh, well, we're providing this accessibility all over the city. If someone's going to have to park there for 8 hours in order to get a charge to get back home, it's not going to really service us. Moreover, what it's going to do is we're going to end up losing parking revenues, and it has far greater implications if we're not really looking at what's really going to solve the public need, and I think it's that fast charger.
Yeah, no,
In the conversation, so in terms of evaluating not just the publicly those that are deployed by municipal efforts, but we have, I know, the mapping system that reflects where there's fast chargers available throughout the city. Right, it's on a private website. Right, PlugShare. And so in that, I mean, has that data been reflected in how you guys look to mapping out future locations, and whether or not we could, because I'd be an advocate of seeing, far less of the slow chargers to focus our energies on putting the fast chargers at strategic locations. So has that been evaluated as part of this working group?
Yeah, I think the answer to the question is yes. So we're looking at all that data and trying to figure out where those locations could be best served. And you're right. I think the fast charging is really the answer. It's kind of the gas station model. It still takes, with with today's technology, it's still maybe a half an hour, so it's not
Sure.
as fast as a gas station. But the vehicles are getting much better, and the power ratings on the DC fast chargers are increasing. So what used to be 50 kW as a standard, we're now seeing, it's 100 and to 350 kW for DC fast charging. So you're getting those charge times down to 15 minutes. I mean, you still have to kind of stay there with the vehicle, but it's becoming more like a gas station type feeling. And the level 2 is really for where people kind of dwell.
Right.
If it's at
They're
work,
hanging out at
they
the
stay.
park or they're at the library, and that makes sense. But I would just suggest that in this conversation, less is more. If we could, I would much rather prioritize our ability to invest in building out the the fast charging network versus then just distributing it everywhere. And especially on the street level, when I think about the street lighting conduit that we're tapping into, and that we don't have the sufficient power supply in order to achieve a fast charger, I think it's just, we have to evaluate everything, all the parking needs that we have in this city, and I think it's just part of the conversation. But thank you all very much for your work. Appreciate it.
And to that conversation, I think you'll find that up until maybe a year ago, there was really one big car out there that had a lot of capacity, and that was Tesla. Now there's numerous cars, the Bolt Chevy, it's up to 150, the Nissan Leaf is 150 miles. They've gone way beyond that 100-mile radius that you couldn't go anywhere. So we're really going to a much larger cars with more need for those charging units. Now the problem for you is you can't just plop down a large power drain in any lot. You have to have access to the power system. So are you mapping out where you could have those kind of fast chargers more logically placed because you have power sources nearby that can feed it?
Yeah, so typically the way the process works is we'll be approached by, say, Tesla or EV America, and they'll have a specific location that they're interested in. So they'll submit to us kind of a preliminary plan, and we'll do a feasibility analysis to determine, hey, what would be required to serve that load, if it's upgrading the transformer, or if it's literally doing a line extension to bring additional power to that facility. So that's typically the way the process works, and sometimes based on that feedback, it'll be too expensive, so then they'll go to another location. So it's kind of an iterative.
But it's being driven by then the private sector more at this point?
A lot of it is the ones on city properties. We're moving forward. We know, for example, LADOT is electrifying their entire bus fleet, so we're working pretty closely with them, and it's specific facilities where those buses park. So we know that we have to bring the power into those facilities. So we're doing that for them and also for Metro too. And those loads are huge. 10 megawatt, size loads. It's pretty big.
Very good. Just and one interesting point I just read over the weekend that Chevron's going to start putting them in gas stations.
Yeah.
They figured out the future's different. So, anyway, any instructions we want to add to this report? I think we've discussed it all, but okay, nothing more. Okay, with that, we will then note and file. That be the order. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
excuse me, I'm sorry, on both 4 and 5, note and
4 and
file.
5, note and
Yes,
file.
Thank you, sir.
And that concludes today's business. Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.